From micros to full-scale sprints, EMI has a complete line of chassis and components that fit any racer's needs. EMI provides a complete customer experience with personalized new chassis construction, complete suspension service, technical assistance, and repairs on any brand of chassis. More than 12,000 parts from the best brands are in stock and ready to ship. From a bare frame to a complete race-ready car, EMI can meet your needs. Call 855-525-1941 or visit us online at eaglemotorsports.com.
All right, we're happy to be here in Prairie City, Iowa today at On Open Wheel 101 in our interview with Lynton Jeffrey. We're at Vortex Racing Products, and Lynton, it looks like things are busy here at the shop today.
Yeah, we're always really busy. We have a lot to accomplish every week. We've got races all over the country that use our product and win with it, and we've got to keep them going fast and with wings.
And you've had a lot of success with that. We'll talk about that a little later. I want to go back to your beginnings because I've had a lot of conversations with you over the years that are really interesting about growing up in Australia and things like that. Talk about how you got into racing. I know it was a family thing for you.
Oh, well, you know, racing for my brother and I, Paul, who's my partner and runs our operation in Australia, our father was a great racer, raced late models. He built his own late models. He was, you know, passionate about racing, dirt track racing, and he raced midgets and all kinds of things. So at a young age, we were, you know, we couldn't wait to get in a go-kart and start our racing career, and we were fortunate enough to have somebody that wanted to give us those opportunities as young kids. But at the same time, you know, you keep working towards sooner or later it's got to be placed on your shoulders. And while you didn't really choose a race in life because you just grew up in it, which is how my brother and I are, at some point you choose it, and that's when you really find that love for it and that passion for it, and you know, and that choice comes with actually paying the bills. So. Or trying to find a way or take responsibility for your race. And now some guys are talented enough they get drives, and some of us have to create our own. So that's what I've been fortunate enough to have a few drives over the years, but most of the time I've kept myself in a race car, and I'm kind of proud of that. And my brother and I, we've worked really hard to make sure that we always have a racing team, and my nephew Thomas is the next one in line, and he's come along really pretty good, racing at Parramatta every week and Sydney Speedway. So he's quite fast, and we've enjoyed seeing him grow in the last couple of years.
You had a lot of success too when you were a youngster racing with the go-karts. I know you had a lot of wins, Formula V's too, I think you raced. Yeah.
I was. I had my dad. One of my dad's best friends was Terry Bennett, and he kept me in racing. He always made sure I had something to race. You know, a lot of times there wasn't a great deal of money, and my brother was racing. He was a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and he worked harder on it. And you know, so Terry would make sure that I would have a motor or a kart to drive or things like that. So as we progressed through that, we decided somehow along the line to try some road racing. So we got some Formula V's, and I was fortunate enough that Terry bought me an old one to start with, and then that wasn't much good, so he had a better one, and he let me drive it, and I was really lucky that I got to win a race at a famous old racetrack called Amaroo Park in Sydney. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's very famous, and a lot of great racing happened there, and I was really blessed to be able to win a race there. And the Coca-Cola Series race was a big deal, and just a young guy. I set fast time that day. It was the first time in history in motorsports, I think, where to the thousands, 3 cars actually qualified on the same time, and I was actually the guy that did it first, so I actually was awarded the quick time. So,
well, that's pretty neat. You were also involved in other sports, though. You like basketball?
Yeah.
You like tennis, obviously. Mm-hmm. So talk about that a little bit as a youngster. What are the differences, I guess, when you're growing up in Australia as far as sports go?
You know, my mum kept my brother and I out of the house, and you know, we were just encouraged to get out there and stay active. I mean, you weren't allowed to sit at home, and you know, we called it the idiot box, and we weren't allowed to watch it very much, you know, so except in the evening. So we were encouraged to play sports. My brother was really you know, he's sort of naturally talented sports person, and he was 4 years older than me, and he would just, he was unreal. He was like my best friend, and we played all kind of sports together, whether it was cricket or basketball. He was really good at basketball, so naturally, being younger, I just loved it too, and so I got to play with him and all his friends. So obviously I grew at it pretty quickly, and I was responsible as a young guy. I had to bring the ball down the court because I was bigger, so that was really what I was given the opportunity to do, and I turned into a pretty decent point guard. I was playing your equivalent of varsity basketball by the time I was in the 8th grade. And I could run the floor, and I was pretty confident in what I did. And we loved other sports like golf and tennis, and I got to play a lot of those, and played tennis against junior McDonald's squad, and we were just active every day and playing something. And I really love tennis and golf. I love the challenges that you get faced with by being responsible to the sport and yourself out there. It's all a mental challenge to you. You can fail or succeed. I mean, team sports are great, and I love basketball, but I always love the challenge of being on my own and have to make those choices for myself, whether I want to lose or whether I could grit it out or you know, have some character and try harder, work harder, things like that. It was on me, and the success was mine too. So I kind of, as a young man, I enjoyed that, and I think that's why I love racing so much.
Yeah, it's individual. You got to work at it. Those types of things. Lessons come from sports. Being a coach myself, you know, that's something that really translates to both sports. So you got up to the age of 18, if I remember right. You had a few midget starts, and you had some success in midgets at the age of 18.
Yeah. That was after the Formula cars. My brother and my dad came to the United States, and they met. Autocraft, Kurt Steiner, Bill Steiner, and very famous people in midgets out in California, and I had good friends with them, and we actually had Kurt and Jerry Coons come and race out there for us, and Bill Lloyd from Arizona. They brought their midget team, so we've sort of got into that, and they bought me a midget. Actually, it was Kevin Doty's midget. And the late Kevin Doty, he was a great racer, and I was very fortunate that it was a very, very well put together race car. It was ahead of its time when it came to Australia, and I had an all aluminum Pontiac engine that was just really, I mean, at the time, if you can imagine, they were turning, the lap record was like about 16.7, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was driving it like a go-kart, and the car was capable of about 14.5-second laps. And every once in a while I'd turn them, and I pretty much lapped most of the field the first days that I was doing it. You know, you probably would have thought I was Steve Kinser, because I thought I did too. So you know, I was too. So you know, I was really fortunate to be able to get in the car and just really get out there and drive it. Unfortunately, my dad saw that I was way faster than the field, and it was pretty unsafe, and I was just inexperienced, so he really wanted me to. The last night I drove it, I think I won the dash, and he wouldn't even let me run the feature. He put on the trailer, and I had a sprint car there that night for the first time, and he said, "You can race that one, and I don't want you to race without a wing." But we did actually win 3 in a row, and we had quite a few good races. We raced at a Bendigo, and I should have won there, and the motor got a blow-to-head gasket or something like that. But I just remember that was the first time I'd ever been dirt, because Parramatta was a clay track. So I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I didn't really get enough of it that I fell in love with it or anything like that. I didn't really like being sideways, and that's how you drove those things. Because I'd spent my life on the pavement, I liked the wing sprint car straight away, because you had to drive it. I mean, you could drive it straight. I mean, people do drive it sideways, and they're successful at it, but it's just not my thing. So I was fortunate enough that getting in the sprint car was a comfortable thing for me. It was more like pavement racing.
You mentioned your dad and Paul made the trip to the States. Was that in your goals when you were a kid to come over to the United States, to come see Knoxville, those types of things? Was that a goal when you were younger?
My dad bought me a flag back when I was 1980 from the Knoxville Nationals. I had it on my wall my whole life. I had, those beautiful calendars of the TMC, Doug Wolfgang in the 8, Steve Siegel and Bobby Allen, and I had a good friend, Bill Roberts, back in Australia, and we grew up with him too. and he'd helped Bobby Allen, and he was part of that team that won the Nationals, and just he had a great fondness for Bobby Allen, so I naturally took more interest in Bobby Allen and the way he raced and drove a car, and just, you know, I kind of liked that, and I liked Doug Wolfgang. He was always really clean and smooth, and you know, I don't know why, but Donnie Kreitz, I had a picture of Donnie Kreitz on my wall, and I kind of just loved that. My brother always had a blue car like his, and his car, my brother's stuff always looked immaculate, and it was like Donnie Kreitz. So I don't know why, but I always liked Donnie Kreitz, and I liked the fact that when the Outlaws came in, he'd beat them, and you know, and I just took an interest in him. And then when I got to the States, I actually got to see him race. It was cool. You know, obviously he's raced over the last years, but I lived in Pennsylvania there for a little while, and yeah, it was. I mean, racing sprint cars for me and coming to America, I did come in 1998 to drive a sprint car. I finally saved up the money I had a ride, and sadly, I mean, you know, not everything works out the way you want it sometimes in life, and I flew into California to drive for a guy called Rick Humphers, super nice people. Him and Christy Humphers, stayed with him for a few weeks, and flew into California, and as I landed he had a young driver that night, and they blew the motor in the car, and he only had one motor, so I didn't get to race. I was all, you know, just disappointing, and you know, some things don't go your way. So it was a couple more years later, or a few years more later, before I got to come and race at the Knoxville Nationals in 2000 after my son died. So.
Yep, your walls sound a lot like mine when I was a kid. I like Kreitz too. He was cool. How about you told me a story one time about your first trip to Knoxville. It wasn't on a race night. Mm-hmm. Could you talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
I was fortunate when I came in. Terry McCall had our car ready to go, and Grant Freeman was working for him at the time, and he said, "Hey, jump in. We're going to go and have some fun tonight." And I said, "Where are we headed?" He said, "We're heading to the racetrack." I said, "Oh, really?" You know, because I'd never actually visually seen Knoxville other than all the pictures and stuff, and it was make me emotional, but it was a dream of mine to go there, and I finally arrived, and it was RAGBRAI. So everyone was partying. You remember it was a.
Why don't you explain what that is? Because a lot of people around the country probably don't know what RAGBRAI is.
RAGBRAI is basically an alcoholics bike race where a whole bunch of people go from town to town like cyclists every day, and they're serious about their cycling, but then they get there and they just all get hammered and party every night. So
across the state of Iowa, it lasts a week.
Yeah. So from one side of Iowa to the other. So. It's a big party, and we got down there, and I don't know why. I said, he said, "Where are you going?" I was headed off. I said, "I'll be back." And I think I went up and sat in J or K or something. I don't remember. I sat right up in the top of the grandstands, and it
was emotional.
Yeah. I sat there. I can take myself right back there right now. It was something that I was, you know, just really amazed to be there, and grateful that I was going to get to race there. And then, believe it or not, if you want to know the backside of the story is if you remember the very first time I raced, it was the night that my good friend Randy Anderson won the feature. He drove by Dan Sosky and I think Terry McCall to win it on the bottom in the 47, Gil Sonner's 47 car. In this strange performance, 47 was cool, and I'll never forget that. But we were actually in the Casey's across the street, and it thundered down, pouring rain. And I was like, I've come all this way, and you know the story about being in California and not getting the race. And I was like, I'm finally here, and it's going to freaking rain out. So it was, you know, I was really frustrated. We did end up getting the race, and then it actually rained during the race, and we had a little bit of a break there, and then they got the feature in, and it was great. But yeah, I remember Randy winning his first race, and that was the first race I was ever at Knoxville. And Randy, actually the motor in the car that we had was Randy's. It was funny how it all came together. We bought it from Australia, didn't even know they knew Terry McCall, but everybody was great friends, and he drove for Lynton McCall, and another great friend of mine that helped me a lot in my career. So.
Absolutely. You mentioned you started racing out in Pennsylvania. How'd that come to be? Where that ended up? Just was there more racing going on there, or was it best for you at the time? Or
when I ran nationals in 2000, there was a gentleman just kind of like it sort of appeared out of nowhere, and I think they having breakfast with my dad or something, him and his wife, and his name's Jeff Brackowitz, and he was from New Jersey. And he started saying, hey, I'd like to give you the opportunity to come to race out in Pennsylvania. I've got a race team, and why don't you come race for me? And I was like, I knew I didn't deserve it, but it was the opportunity of a lifetime. And at the time, I was going through a lot of different things in my life. I was getting divorced, and my son had just passed away. I wasn't in a good place. So, business was ramping up for Vortex in Australia. It was really pretty solid. We had a really good market share. We had something to build off, but I knew that I always wanted to bring the business to the United States. And so I was like, it was a tough call for my brother. It was hard for everyone in my family, but I said, I'm going to go and give it a shot. So I went there, and when I got to Pennsylvania, well, it was really New Jersey, the gentleman really didn't have anything that he said he had. And as, he did try very hard, and we did get a car together. Steve Siegel had a nice car, and we bought it from Danny Dietrich and uses Race Parts Warehouse. It was a good car, and we got that. It was Steve Siegel's, and Gary Stanton was very helpful and got us a motor. Actually, the fella bought the motor on the credit card. He was a little bit different, but like most car owners are. And we ran about 12 times, and I got to race in Williams Grove, and ran top 5 at Port Royal, straight out of the box in it pretty much. And I was being in that little town, Clinton, New Jersey. I found one of the very best friends I've ever had in my life in Kevin Fry. Him and Tom, son of stepson or son-in-law of Bob Trossel, was trucking, and they were trucking together, driving Kevin's trucks, and they came into the diner there, a little diner called Louisa's Diner in Clinton, New Jersey, and they were trucking between New York and Pennsylvania, and they had racing t-shirts on. And I don't know where I would be today. I don't know if any of this would exist had it not been for that chance meeting. So I'm very lucky, and Kevin supported me. A matter of fact, as that ride fell apart and became apparent that the gentleman couldn't afford it as much as he wanted to do it, I'm grateful for the opportunity because that created that next one. And it's funny how things work out, but Kevin and Laurie Fry took me in, and I don't even know why he would do that, but I helped Kevin, and we went racing for a little while with him, and he helped me. He had an old Maxim there, let me clean it up and build it, and we got a motor from Chris Eash, another good friend of mine over the years, a great racer too. And I more or less put that little car together. We came out and ran about 9 or 10 races, the Nationals in 2001, and then that springboarded me into, while I was doing that, I'd started talking to Chuck Merrill about helping him with the chassis and starting something. And I wasn't sure where I was going to end up, but I did end up in Springfield there for a little while, and trying to help help Maxim design the Rose Rolls chassis, and kind of proud of that. And it was something that built a lot of respect from me in the industry and everyone else, that I had something to offer, and I think that's why people had confidence in trying out my wings, and they knew I had some ingenuity, and as it comes to pass, some of the designs that we had are still working very well today, and I was probably in the way of wings, we were a long way ahead of ourselves. So I'm very lucky to have good help from and good. I mean, I experienced a lot, and I owe a lot to people back in Australia like Steve Brazier, and Gary Brazier's father, who's a mentor of mine, really taught me everything I needed to know about a sprint car, and got me started not building the wings, but got me started heading in the right direction on design, and I took it from there, and I was lucky just to be able to really think about things in an analytical way. I went to university to do a mechanical engineering degree, and while I didn't complete it, I think it gave me a mindset for something that just the way to analyse things practically and scientifically, and then being able to use the theory and cross it over into practice, and just my natural ability and to take that product and put it on the race car and get to drive it. None of my competitors really can drive a sprint car, and not to the level I can. So you know, I think that's a big plus, and that gives our customers a lot of confidence that I can go out and develop more and more and more. I'm constantly trying something. I probably hurt my career in some fashion, but I've helped my family and helped our business in other ways. But we know a lot of what not to do a lot of times. You know, there's a lot of trial and error, but we have that confidence in all our competitors that, hey, if he can drive it, maybe I can too, you know. So I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy building wings every day. It's part of the passion of this sport. Obviously, I do this so I can be a part of the sport. You know, I'm not sure if I didn't race that I find that much passion in what I do. But you know, I've been doing it quite a while, and I'm encouraged to stay at the front of it if I can. I want to build the best quality product. I don't want to build the cheapest product. We work hard every day to build wings for Tony Stewart Racing, Donny Shots, and I think our record, you know, Don's won every Knoxville Nationals and every World of Outlaw Championship with a Vortex wing, and he was quite competitive before he had them, but he really didn't become the great champion he has become till I was part of that puzzle, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and he's not the only one. You know, around the country, there's several. I know ASCS champion Sam Haferteep Jr. just another one. I wanted to ask you, over the years, you know, they're always changing rules, all those types of things. You talked a little about the change to the flat wing. How did that? First of all, how did it come about, and how did that change what you do here at the shop?
You know, it keeps you on your toes, and you keep developing. I felt like it was going to come along, so I started working on it, and probably I started working on it in 2005, and so I was ahead of the curve. You know, it wasn't really instituted properly till 2009, so I was 4 years in front of it, but I knew it was going to go that road. If you really want to go back to the beginning when I came here, if you remember the rule book, there was less than a paragraph. It was probably 4 lines that was in the rules for. I could just about
just the dimensions. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it was 5x5 with a 1-inch wicker bill and 30-inch side panels. That was the Knoxville rule. The World of Outlaw rule. The only difference for that World of Outlaw rule is the side panel could only be 72 inches or 6 feet long. So that was the only difference. The All-Stars allowed you to run a 2-inch wicker bills, but didn't let you run the rudders for some reason. I don't know why, but we did, you know. By the time we hit 2007 and we had Donny Shots running our wings, there was 4 pages of rules for wings. I'm sorry, but no other manufacturer was pushing the envelope. No one else built anything special. With the exception of Willie Kane, built that crazy side panel, and that was probably, you know, with the exception of that, and I felt like that we had a version of that ourselves at the same time, and the 2-inch kickers were doing more than and we were more effective in what we were doing, I think because I understood it better. And just Don was really awesome at being able to, he adapted to the wing really quickly, and he actually got in front of it in experience on everybody else. In other words, he learned how to use the wing properly and drive it the best, and he had that experience. So while they were all learning, he was winning, and they really didn't get what he had, so for quite a while. So we changed the way that a sprint car operated. We changed the setup. So if you didn't have our wing, you couldn't do the setup. You know, those other guys were really at a loss, and the frustration for them was they were all on free wing deals, and they had support from wing companies that had supported them for a long time, and they were loyal to their company, but at the same time they weren't competitive. And Don, you know, and the guys at one point there, I can't remember which year it was, but we had a 1st to 13th at Knoxville at an outlaw show. Every single wing was a Vortex dish wing, and they were more expensive. They were harder to build. They weren't square. The side panels weren't square. There was a lot more technology in them than any other wing company had ever thought about. And if you didn't really have it, you couldn't really compete. So unless you had an absolutely spot-on perfect car and everything else going for you, you really weren't in the game. And it frustrated a lot of them. And rather than just, you know, kind of let me have my way, they decided to clamp down on it and felt like it was a disadvantage. And it really became about a cry for help for money, like it was too expensive. It wasn't fair. You know, obviously that was frustrating for us in our business. We should have got the benefits of being able to grow as a company from that. But in the same time, we created a great reputation for ourselves. People knew that we led the way in ingenuity. They know that today. They still always look to me to what we're doing. They're still trying to emulate our product. You know, there's some companies out there trying hard to do their own thing at the moment, and I admire that. But most of the time, it's definitely derived from what I've done. And I've been fortunate enough to work with people like Ricky Warner, who have helped me stay in the box somewhat. There's a lot of people to thank and be grateful to. But at the end of the day, a lot of this is my own hard work in the race car and trying stuff and failing a lot. So
trial and error on your own stuff.
As they say, a lot of success always comes from a lot of failure.